Hi, and welcome to SforScience. And what happens if we create a perfect pool that allows us to simulate ideal conditions that only occur once every million years in nature? Well, that we would create a singularity of waves, an infinitesimally small point in space in which suddenly a lot of water accumulates that, since it doesn't fit, it is forced to be catapulted upwards. All the energy that the huge circular wave carried has been concentrated in a single point and used so that the water shoots out. In the description of this video, I have left you a very cool video made by Gavin and Dan of the Slow-Mo Guys YouTube channel, in which they visited these facilities, being able to record the singularity in slow motion, obtaining truly fascinating images. I recommend that you watch it when you have a moment. It is very cool. But nature is not perfect, because it is the result of chance. It is possible that in the entire history of the planet's oceans, a singularity of waves hasn't happened yet, because the circular precision and the tempos have to be very close to perfection for this phenomenon to even occur. However, from time to time, something very close and similar to the singularity happens, and much more terrifying. The mighty monster waves. Until very recently, monster waves were considered exaggerations by sailors. Pseudoscientific verbiage that did not go beyond legends. Stories were told of almost vertical walls of water of 50 meters that would suddenly rise in the calm sea, disappearing after a few seconds, destroying everything in their path. But the evidence was almost nil. Very few sailors claim to have seen these waves with these monstrous characteristics. And in fact, this is why it has taken so long to prove their existence. Because until a few years ago, the price of being able to see a monster wave used to be death. And note, I am not talking about small fisherman boats missing in a storm. I'm talking about the wreck of the MS Munchen, a German freighter, pioneer in its time, one of the first that had been designed to be indestructible. In 1978, it was in the middle of the Atlantic, making its traditional route between Europe and the US. On the night of the 12th of December, it entered a storm with conditions that were somewhat harsh, but for which the cargo ship had been designed to withstand without any problems. He notified to the nearby ships and continued sailing like this, with relative calm for a few hours, until suddenly the cargo ship became completely silent. Forever. Nothing else was known of the MS Munchen. Over the next few days, fleets of European and American planes flew over the area, while dozens of nearby ships canceled their routes and came to help. But nothing was found, except a lifeboat that belonged to the MS Munchen, that had been torn from the freighter by force as it continued docked to the metal arms from which it was originally hung, which were also very deformed. Deformed metal. Only a huge force could have torn the boat this way, which, by the way, when it left Germany, was located 20 meters high in the upper part of the freighter. Something very big, sudden, tall, and above all very strong engulfed the MS Munchen that night. Today, it is believed that it was a monster wave. In the ocean, in very bad conditions, when there has been very strong winds blowing for almost 3 days, there can be waves of about 15 meters at most. Sometimes, when these conditions exist for a long time, or there is a hurricane, there are expectations that exceed this figure. But the monster waves, we know that they can reach 48 meters. But until recently, we thought that they were fantasy. So all the research is very recent. Who knows how high they can reach? Almost every ship that meets a monster wave sinks forever. Very few have managed to save themselves and reach the port, despite the fact that the hulls of the ships showed clear signs that something terrible had hit them. They were judged with disbelief by the rest of the people who had not witnessed the near catastrophe, skeptical of the idea that the water could cause so much damage in the resistant metal of the boats. But everything changed on January 1st, 1995. It was not long before I was born, by the way, although this is a somewhat irrelevant fact. Thing is that on the first night of the year, a Norwegian platform in the North Sea called the Dropner detected the first monster wave in history recorded by an instrument that survived to tell the story. That day, the sea was rough, with waves reaching 5 meters in height, nothing out of the ordinary, and suddenly, out of nowhere, the wave arrived, of almost 20 meters of height. Lonely and monstrous, it did not reach the highest part of the platform, so although it did suffer damage, it did not collapse. From that day, the scientific community accepted the existence of these waves that, although very rare, seem to lurk our oceans, being an almost fatal danger for any vessel that gets in their way. But where do these monsters come from? Well, remember the video of the beginning, of the singularity of waves. The formation of monster waves is very similar. They occur when a lot of energy is accumulated in a wave, not in a point, in this case. For this to happen, it must occur what in physics is called a constructive wave interference. Or in other words, that the waves add up, either because they have different speeds or because they collide at a very specific angle. If you have ever been on a beach with sandbanks or tides, it is possible that you have seen very small monster waves that form when waves crash from different directions on the beach. Well, if you put into the equation powerful sea currents, storm winds, and already giant waves, it results that from time to time, probability creates unpredictable monstrous anomalies. This is something key to understand about these waves, that their main feature is that they are characterized by having a height that stands out well above the average of the rest of the waves that are in the sea at that moment. So monstrous waves can emerge that are not that dangerous, of 15 meters or 10 perhaps, but that come out of a calm sea, with waves of maximum 1 or 2 meters in height. This is what makes them so dangerous, that they appear out of nowhere, without warning, in seas that would seem not dangerous. And if the sea is already somewhat dangerous in itself, they can be extremely lethal. What you're seeing is a simulation of one of the ways in which monster waves are formed, by accumulation of small waves that basically eat each other, due to speed differences. Once again, this is something that can occur by chance, but it's very rare in the chaos of nature and the oceans. But when it occurs, something terrifying is created, a monster capable of sinking any ship. And it's not a way of speaking or a dramatization. Apart from this enormous height, whose scope we still do not know for sure, what makes this wave so dangerous are these 3 factors. First, its geometry. It is much more vertical than other normal waves, so a normal boat cannot surf, but instead gets inside it and breaks in two, collapsing under its own weight. Second, its spontaneity, since they last a few minutes or even seconds. This makes them appear out of nowhere when the singularity occurs, becoming completely unpredictable and inevitable. And third, and most importantly, their incredible strength. A large standard wave, not a monster of the worst that we thought existed, of normal origin, can exert a force of 59 kilopascals. The boats around the world are designed to be able to withstand up to 150 kilopascals. That is why the MS Munchen was considered indestructible, as well as all the ships that today sail through the most dangerous seas on the planet. The thing is, monster waves exert forces of 980 kilopascals. The MS Munchen was not sunk slowly like the Titanic. Surely, it was destroyed and devoured by the ocean instantly. At the moment, only 2 people have recorded monster waves and have been able to survive to reach port and share it. The first one, unfortunately of very bad quality as you're seeing, corresponds to the Aleutian Ballet in the Bering Sea that encountered a very modest monster wave of 18 meters. They almost don't tell the tale. They suffered widespread damage to the hull, loss of energy, and the engines stopped. Fortunately, thanks to the expertise of the captain, he managed to prevent the other waves from sinking the ship, and they managed to fix the engines and return to port before the ship completely sank. The second video belongs to the Pink Coral, a fairly large Maltese tanker, navigating the waters of the Bay of Biscay to the north of Spain. A little harsh, but normal. Suddenly, they encountered this wave. As you can see, it appears out of nowhere, and it is very high compared to the rest of the waves, being even taller than the ship itself. Two characteristics that define monster waves very well. This one would be of a baby category. It was created by waves that, as you have seen, were at most 2 meters. But if such small waves can already create something like that, imagine yourself in the middle of a storm in the Atlantic Ocean. And in the same way that monster waves are formed, monster holes are also formed, which are the complete opposite. Sudden and very focused sea level depressions with tens of meters of unevenness, perhaps even hundreds, that would engulf any ship that passes nearby. Its existence has been proved in the laboratory, but not yet in nature. Being, at the moment, legends of sailors. We don't know anything. Maybe because they are even more deadly than the waves. Thank you very much for watching the video, and goodbye.